Welcome to Beyond the Prep, a podcast dedicated to providing information and insights into the bodybuilding sport. This podcast covers a wide range of topics from finding a coach to the struggling of competing, nutrition, supplements, cost, and much more. I'll be talking with competitors so you can hear their stories, judges, coaches. If you're interested in sharing your story, send me a note at scapach40@gmail.com. Welcome to Beyond the Prep. I'm your host today, Sherrie Capach, and I'd like to welcome my guest, Bella Parker. She is a competitor in the wellness division. Welcome, Bella. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for you.
So let's start with the first question of why did you get into bodybuilding?
So at a young age, I saw a photo of a competitor that used to be very popular named Monica Brandt. And I think I was about 12 years old, and I decided that I wanted to be her. And at the time, bodybuilding was not nearly as big as it is now. And I had a poster of her in my room, and I started trying to teach myself how to weight lift when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's young.
Yep.
So did you know any, like back then, there probably wasn't a lot of female bodybuilders?
No, there were hardly any. And at the time, there was only one category, which was women's fitness. And everyone wore one-piece velour suits.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of changed a little bit since then.
A lot. A lot.
So how many years have you been, like when you first started, how old were you when you started then, if you were interested at the age of 12?
So I started weightlifting from 12 years old all the way up through high school. I did fitness conditioning and was in a lot of sports. And I probably trained at the gym maybe 3 times a week while I was in high school, 3 to 4 times a week. By the time I was in grade 12, I started wanting to do my first prep. And by the time I was 19, I was in my first prep.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah.
So what did you find hardest during your prep?
At 19, not partying.
Oh, and how did it go? Like you did with your first competition?
So I've actually never really talked about this before, but my first prep, I actually got cold feet right when I made it to the stage, and I actually didn't make it on the stage. So I don't talk about that often. I have actually massive stage fright, but I did the prep all the way up until the show day. And then I kept training, and I ended up, let's see, on stage, my first show competing. I think I was 27.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You made it on that stage.
I made it.
So when you were competing and during prep, what about the post show? What's involved in that? How important is that as compared to like pre-show prep, and then you compete, and then you have your post show?
Yeah. I would actually argue that post show is more important than any other part of prep. It's also the most difficult time mentally, physically, spiritually, pretty much in every way. You're put through the ringer, your body is changing, you're putting on water, you're putting on weight. It's super important to listen to your coach and to reverse diet out properly, but also to give yourself a lot of grace and a lot of patience and leadway. It's very difficult going from being, between 4 and 8% body fat on stage, even as a woman. Most women, I think, are about 10 to 12% body fat on stage. So as you know, when you're coming off of that, your body can't stay at that percentage in a healthy state as a woman for your hormones and things like that. So it can be, pardon my French, but a mind fuck for you to have to come out of that, right? And be okay with your body and hold your head high. You'll have a lot of self-judgment where you'll go into the gym and you think people that, you've known through your prep are going to think that you look terrible and things like that, but no one really cares. They're just proud about you. So the number one thing I always tell my clients or friends that are going through a prep, listen to your coach, do the reverse dieting. You have been disciplined for 4 to 6 months nonstop. You can do it again for 6 to 8 more weeks, and if you do, you'll come out of it in a much healthier spot, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the mind games.
Yeah.
This sport certainly targets the mind just as much, if not more, than the bodybuilding itself, like
yes.
the workouts and all the discipline, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you struggle? Like, do you struggle with that in the way of comparison? Social media is just huge. And everybody's posting, and they're always posting their best photo of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever struggle with that comparison when you're in prep?
So when I was younger, I would say probably my first 2 shows, I would literally go on to the show that I was competing at's Instagram page, watch their stories, add the competitors that I thought were against me. I would zoom in on them to try and see how tall they were, to see if they were going to be in my category, But it got to the point where I really realized that you show up that day the best that you can be for yourself. And you're really just in competition with yourself. So as long as you're improving every single show, you're looking different every single show for the better, that's really should be your only comparison point. Also, half of the people that look that great on Instagram will show up on stage and they won't know they're posing, or maybe they're not in your class, or maybe they're not ready, or maybe they may not even show up. You just don't know who's going to come that day. So I personally don't struggle with it now, but I do have a lot of clients and friends that do struggle with that. And I would, if I had to give any advice, it would be to stay off social media and stop comparing yourself to those people. Don't even look at it. Don't add them. Don't talk to them. If you are going to talk to them, nice words only, no cattiness. Don't get in your head, because this industry can be pretty brutal if you get on that side of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that with my first. Now it's like I try to, when I'm getting close, I try to stay off of the social media sites, because I am guilty to compare and look and judge, and so I understand that part. Just stay off.
And that's the biggest thing, right? We're not the judges, just like you said. So there's no point in us judging other people's physiques or trying to judge our own, because we have professionals doing that for us, an entire panel, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So have you ever changed categories?
Yes, I've been in 3 categories. So I did bikini, then figure, then wellness and figure at nationals a year and a half ago.
So how was that to change from bikini to figure?
So I went to provincials in 2017 with the ABBA. I think it was the last provincials with them. And I walked on stage thinking I was bikini, and I was probably 20 pounds heavier than everyone in my class. So the feedback was, of course, that I was too large for bikini. I had too much muscle density. And so I trained for figure for a year and a half after that show, because of how much muscle I had to stack on my upper body, which I didn't have from training for bikini. Bikini posing is a lot more difficult for me. That the whole flirty vibe that's on stage does not naturally come to me. I wear Converse or no shoes at all. So going to figure was a lot easier for me, actually, because the posing was more straightforward. I felt that I didn't have to try and, put on a persona or anything like that for the class. Just for myself, it was an easier transition. But it's interesting because you get to eat differently and train differently. And one piece of advice I always give people is always pick a category that you can grow into. Don't pick a category that you have to atrophy yourself for to stay in. So for me, bikini would have been something that I couldn't naturally stay in because of how much muscle I had. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So then going from figure to wellness, and then actually even competing in both on that stage, how was that?
So going to wellness, I was actually very relieved because I'm Latina. I have a very large lower body for anyone that knows me. So I was, like I was saying, constantly atrophying my lower body and then trying to force muscle on my upper body, which doesn't come to me naturally for my shape. So wellness actually was not a category that was introduced at the time I was doing figure in Canada until after. So I had won my class for figure A. Wellness came out. I got super excited, and we thought, we had 4 weeks before Van Pro Am, and we thought, let's just put me in it and see what the judges thought. So I placed 5th in figure A and 1st in wellness A at Van Pro Am, and ended up in the overall for pro card. Rosie went pro. She's amazing. But the one thing that I found is I would never suggest doing 2 categories at a pro qualifier because I had to change backstage naked for the championship. I couldn't even make it back to the change room. I ended up having to just rip one suit off, put the other one on, and then go back on stage. So that was difficult.
Yeah. And the suits, the styles are different, correct?
Very different, yeah. So wellness, the bottoms are pretty much a thong and more like a bra-like top, and then figure, they crisscross in the back, so it's hard to get on and off, and a lot more coverage in the bottoms than a wellness suit.
Okay. All right. Now, at one point, you had decided to hang up your heels. So how difficult of a decision is that when you've been bodybuilding and competing for so long?
It honestly was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. Bodybuilding encompasses all of who you are. In order for you to be successful in it, you surround yourselves by friends, people that eventually become your family. You're volunteering at events. For myself, I own a company that's involved directly backstage with doing services. So much of who you are, that literally thousands of hours you've put into meal prepping, posing, and training, and it, living and eating, breathing bodybuilding, that when you come out of it, it's very difficult for you to have a sense of identity apart from the sport. Very difficult for you to not feel like you failed because you're taking a step back. But once you get through that, you find that you can have balance and you can still be involved and you can still be passionate about fitness. It doesn't take away from who you are at all. The one piece of advice I can give is, since I'm already back doing bodybuilding again, don't ever make that decision for another person. Always make that decision for you. And if your heart is still in the sport and you love the sport, don't give it up for anything else. You fight for that dream because it's worth it.
Good advice. Good advice. Do what's right for you, right?
Yeah.
So back to, you were saying that you work behind the stages as well. So yes, you are the owner of Weave Life, which is dealing with hair extensions for the shows, competitions. So if someone's looking in that kind of a line, because there is so much involved when it comes to competing: your hair, your makeup, your suits, your shoes, your jewelry. So when they are competing, say even for the first time, and how does the hair extensions come into play?
So your hair when you're on stage has to hit the smallest point of your back, especially if you're trying to hide muscularity in your back. If you're in wellness or you're in bikini and you're trying to cover it, you need to make sure that it's big enough and long enough to hide that so that you just look a bit softer and feminine on the upper body. And then you have more focus on your glutes. For figure, you have to move your hair off of your back So it just looks beautiful on stage if they can, flip it out of the way and things like that. It draws the judge's eyes to you. But more importantly, it pretty much is the crown that you're putting on for that day. So if you've spent thousands of hours, like I said, posing, prepping, training, you're getting professional makeup done, you're getting the darkest tan that you've ever had in a suit that has basically 1,000 rhinestones on it. Your hair should match that. It should be, glam, and it should be a little bit over the top, and it should just kind of fit the package. There's nothing worse than seeing someone with a killer physique that could win overall go on stage with, short damaged hair or extensions that aren't blended or the wrong color. Because that's what I've literally talked to Rudy and Ron before, the head judges for the CPA, and they've said it just makes such a big difference. If someone goes on stage and, you can see what I call a mullet from their hair extensions, your eye is drawn up to their hair. It's not going to their physique, right? So it's just super important that you kind of gloss every area of your package. It's the overall package that's being judged.
And you can match any color or any length, correct? With these?
Correct. Yeah.
Beautiful. So one more question here. If you could give one piece of advice to someone even thinking about going into this sport, what would that be?
Go into it with an open heart. There are people in every industry that can be negative or can be catty. And there are a lot of people like that, unfortunately, in our industry. But there are a lot of beautiful things that you can learn from the sport. A lot of women and mentors, and they might not be pros. Don't pour all of your respect and admiration into people that just have an IFBB Pro card. Go into it looking for women that care about you, looking for that support system, looking to learn more about yourself, just being open to what you feel and what you can learn as a person during prep. This sport is absolutely beautiful for building your confidence, for showing that you matter. Standing on that stage and holding your head high. Currently, I'm going through one of the darkest times of my life. When I get on that stage July 1st, I'm going up there with an open heart, surrounded by people that love me, with my head high. It's not about placings, we're a family. So if you can go into this sport, not getting too caught up in the placings, not getting too caught up in the comparisons, but really just being present with those around you and seeing the beauty in it, you will have and build a lifelong family, which is what I have.
Beautiful. Good advice. Wonderful. Yeah, it is. Support is huge in this sport as well, because it can get pretty lonely out there if you're just you and you don't have the support around you, especially with playing with the head games and the time it takes and the motivation, commitment. It's very
protect your energy, right? Protect your energy and get into a positive place and just have fun with it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, enjoy it. It's a tough one, but it can be wonderful if you allow it to be.
Exactly, if you allow it to be.
Yeah. All right. On that note, I'd thank you very much for joining me. Once again, if they need to look you up for hair extensions, where can they find you?
www.weavelife.ca or at Weave Inc. on Instagram.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bella. And hoping you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Sherrie. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
I want to thank my guests today and my listeners for joining me at Beyond the Prep. If you like this episode and want to make sure you don't miss any others, please subscribe. You can also find us on YouTube.